We are live. All right. Hey there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. It's, Ben and Zach. We're going to be doing a SQL interview prep, kind of a mock interview. So we're going to be using StrataScratch because last night I was going to go through the whole process of building a database on Snowflake. And then I realized, wait, I could just go to StrataScratch and use all their free questions that they have. Sadly, we didn't get a sponsorship, which would have been smart for us. But yeah, Zach, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Perfect. Doing good. Excited to kind of show people, how maybe you would walk through some of these interview questions. This first one we've got is just going to be, I think, hopefully a nice, easy one. Basically, in this case, we've got a data set for bike share, and the goal is to write a query to find the last time each bike was in use. So basically, the output should be both the bike number and the date timestamp of the bike's last use. And you can, with it, you can kind of see their expected output there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The expected output. Yeah. The bike and then their last use. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. This one seems pretty straightforward because what we can do here, right, is there is the kind of the idea around there isn't too much here. Like this one really just screams do an aggregation. It seems like in this case you have the last use, which is going to be probably the end time, the end time of this kind of time that they were in use. Assuming, hold up, assuming okay, because then I need to look at the data real quick. I gotta just see what is in here to see if there's any sort of state. Okay, it looks like it looks like each one of these is just the last time it was in use. There's not any dormant sessions or anything in here where rider type or anything like that is null. I was just making sure that so that we don't need to do a case when. So in this case, yes. I really think this one's pretty straightforward. So in this case, we're gonna do bike number, and then we're just gonna say max. Then we're gonna say end time. And this is gonna be does this have what is it expected as last used?
Oh yeah, we're gonna want to name it the thing it needs to get named. Yes.
Yeah. Group by bike number. So this is probably I think this is it. I think that where is
you scroll? Yeah, I found it. Yeah, you got to check solution.
Oh, you got to scroll all the way back up. Okay.
Yeah.
You have a syntax error. Check your group by bike number. Max end time. What? You have check the SQL version. I have a double as. That's why I'm being silly. I'm what is going on here? Okay. So this looks pretty good here. Is there any other thing that I'm looking for here? Order the results by bikes that were most recently used. So in this case, you want to do order by max end time descending, right? We got to throw on that descending. So now I think this is it. Oh yeah, look at that. That looks right to me. That looks like
I'm sure you could hit check solution.
Yeah, check solution.
I'm pretty sure.
That's a W right there, dude. That's the kind of SQL interview question that you want to get, dude. And sometimes in the interview, even in big text, sometimes this is the question you get, and you're like, wow, okay.
Every once in a while, it's usually the first question you'll get an easy aggregate question. One thing I like that you did there was you actually looked at the data, right? Because I remember, I think my interview at Facebook, it was at some point I was just oh yeah, can you tell me something about the data? And they're you can just query it yourself. And you're
you don't just have to think about it, right? And just kind of infer things you can actually show that's a big thing to show though, is kind of your debug process of how do you actually do things, right? Let me grab that one now.
Okay, I need another question.
Is there a way
That was a good intro question though.
Oh, I think if I swap this one to here. Okay, now I'm showing here. All right.
So this one's hopefully awesome. a little more complicated.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got a hard here, dude. Ooh, okay.
It says hard. Honestly, looking through them all, they're all I feel medium compared to hards on leak code, where I'm sometimes it's so hard.
The leak code ones are absolutely bananas sometimes. All right. So in this case, we have find how the number of drivers that have churned changed in each year compared to the previous one. output the year. Specifically, you can use the year the Lyft driver left, along with the corresponding number of churns in that year, the number of churns in the previous year, and an indication on whether the number has increased, decreased, or stayed the same. Okay, so
there's a lot going. There's a little more going on in this one.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so in the first case here, I love to just like query the data, make sure that we have. Okay, so we do have an end date. End date is going to be the kind of the that's going to be the churn year, right? That's what that's going to be. Okay, so in this case, I'm pretty sure we're going to want to do we're going to do year end date as year, and then I'm just going to put end date in here. And I'm going to throw in like we can just put where end date is not null, because like we don't care about the people who aren't churning. So this should give us, okay, so now this is going to be like, we have the year and then the amount of churn that they have, right? This is going to be the number of people who are doing that. Can I look at the, okay, like, and then, so in this case, this is pretty close here. So what we want to do here is we can put a count here. We can just put like a count 1, and then we want to put group by year. And so this is going to give us like, essentially, this will give us a very small amount of data now. Like we should have, okay, so this is the amount of churn that we've seen kind of year over year. But the problem here is we need to this is where this gets tricky. This is the part where people are like, ooh, what do we do? So in this case, what we want is we want to have we're going to put this in like a CTE real quick. We're going to put this as yearly churn as like a CTE here. So now this will give us a nice thing that we can work with. So we're going to say select star from yearly churn. And then we're actually going to call this like YC1. We're going to say full outer join yearly churn. We'll call this YC2. So we're going to do a self join here. And but this self join is going to be a funky one. We're going to say on YC1 equals YC2 minus 1, so that we can get kind of a side-by-side comparison of this churn.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Okay.
Yep.
Full out from yearly churn, full outer join. Is it not like the width? Is it like?
Let's see.
That looks right though. Okay, full outer join, yearly churn, YC2. Oh, this is because this is dot year. That's fine. Yeah, I'm being sloppy today. All right. Okay. Okay. Saying corresponding full outer join on YC1 dot year as year. That looks right to me. Okay,
Let's
wait a minute.
Group by year.
What? Now this is weird to me. This actually looks right. Let's see here. Okay, we have on YC1 dot year.
Maybe try using something other than year. I don't know if that's the issue, but maybe for
yeah,
some reason.
like hold up, because like if I just say, or like I want to see if it's like if I just do like a Cartesian product. Okay, so it's mad at like this line. It's mad at like it's not this, right? So like, what if we do a join here? Does this work? Okay, join, and then on YC1 equals dot year equals YC2 dot year. That should just like, because that, okay, that works. Okay.
So it must be something with the, like maybe full join, maybe don't.
Yeah,
outer.
maybe it's not. They don't like the word outer, dude. Like that's one of the things, and sometimes in these interviews, right, is that you get the syntax. Okay, it doesn't like that. Okay, then fine. We'll just do a left join. Okay, left worked great. Left worked great, and that because we can assume that okay, so this is going to be year 2. So let's put let's say YC1 dot year, YC2 dot year, and then let's just like, I want to see like how the joins here are kind of like merging together. So we see we have 18, 19. Okay, we want, but then 19 doesn't have a, oh yeah, because that makes sense, because 19 doesn't have the 20, right? So this is going to be year over year, where the current year is actually in this one, which I don't like actually. I think this should actually be a +1, just because then we have the one on the left that's the There we go. Then now now this is last year, and then this is current year, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually change these, right? I'm gonna call this as current year. I'm gonna call this last year, just to really have some nice SQL here, right? So current year, and then in this case, we only need we want last year, and I'm gonna call this as churn. Right, and we have last year dot churn. We have current year dot churn. So this is going to get us pretty close. Obviously, like in the interview, I wouldn't probably do this as much because I would just be. It's all about trying to get the question as quick as possible.
Yeah.
But then then it says the number of churns in the previous year and an indication on whether the number has increased, decreased, or stayed the same. Okay. Output the year. Okay. I'll put the year specifically along with the corresponding number of churns in that year. So that's going to be current year. And then we want just like a case when last year dot churn is greater than current year dot churn. This is going to be like a big old case statement. Then we're going to say then decreased when last year dot churn is less than current year dot churn, then increased, increase, decrease, and then else is it no change, and else as increase in say like change indicator, I guess, change indicator. So that will give us the kind of the churn and then the amounts, and I think this is like pretty good now. So yeah, we have our increase, decrease, increase, no change, right? That makes sense to me. I think there might be an edge. There's an edge here, maybe around like the very first year, this 2015 year, because you have like the null, right? You have like, you don't have the year over year comparison for the year before. So that might be weird, but I think I'm feeling comfortable checking the solution. Oh, you've discovered a premium feature. Curses.
Yeah. Oh shoot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, is this like a premium question? Do you have?
Yes, but how are you supposed to? They should have let us know. I was just assuming that I could do it. I'd say I assume this is pretty close. I think the one thing that they did different in this was they. Let me go back to what I put together. They put like you have end churn, then there's also end churn previously, and then then there's that case when. Which you have. So I think overall this should be right.
Yeah, just like I might need some more as's in here, like some aliases. Yeah. Awesome, great, dude. That was a good one.
The only other thing that like, well, you did it the opposite way, right? Like most people might be like, oh, I could just do a lag here, right? Like this would be like one query instead of two.
Yeah, I like one of the reasons why I did it this way with a self join versus lag is that like not all query engines necessarily have lag, right? If you like, if you go into like, because like at Facebook, a lot of the times they will be like, hey, now do this problem without a window function. They're going to push you to do it without a window function. And so like knowing how to do stuff with self joins and doing it kind of like this way can also be very powerful because this query is going to run pretty much on every engine, no matter what. So that's like that's one of the reasons why I did it this way versus using lag.
Yep, exactly. That's always like the fun little part that I'm always just like, I'll usually just stop people as soon as they're like, oh, I'll use row number. I'm like, well, if you didn't have it.
How would you do it without that? Just using like joins, and because this really helps people test their like fundamentals, right? Of like, do they really understand how joins work, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, because of this one, I'm not sure if the other ones are going to end up being, also premium features. I think when we did like a thing with StrataScratch, they gave us all free accounts. So I probably didn't.
You have the premium. It's all good. Okay, this one looks good. Okay, find the best-selling item for each month where the biggest total invoice was paid. The best-selling item is calculated using the formula unit price times quantity. Output the description of the item along with the amount paid. Okay, so we have for each month, and then I always start with just like running it and seeing what we have in here, right? So we have, okay, so we have our invoice, we have our unit price. So one of the things that this is really screaming at me here is like finding the best selling item for each month. This is really screaming to use the date trunk function, right? So it's like date trunk month invoice date.
Yeah.
And then you have like invoice date. This is like, if you know this function, that's like, I think that's the one, like, does it not have, does not, is it, it's
I think you have to use date part.
No, I think it works. I think date trunk is fine. Date trunk is fine. It's the, I just put an under, like this is like, this is bad. Like, I mean, there should be an underscore there. Like if we're talking about like, if I want to critique StrataScratch's data modeling skills, like, yeah, that's like, that's how I would do that. Okay. So it's saying, find the best selling item for each month where the biggest total invoice was paid. The best selling item is calculated. Okay. So this is actually more complicated because this one, I think I would reach for the window function in this case, because of the fact that I'm pretty sure like you're going to need a partition on this date trunk, right? That's going to be like the partition. And then you're going to order by this unit price times quantity. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say we're going to have like invoice, no, and then we're going to have description. And then in this case, I'm going to put like we're going to do like I like dense rank. And then we're going to do over, and then in this case, we're going to say partition by that. And then we have order by. Order by in this case is very strange. It's unit price times quantity, right? That's going to be I don't do that very often where I put like a derived field, like some sort of like that is a weird thing in SQL right there. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I got that syntax right. Okay, I did get that syntax right. But this is actually going to be in this case, this is going to be the cheapest, right? We actually want to, we want a descending here. Okay. Is there anything, I want to make sure that there's like, okay, there's no other thing in here around, like, what should I say here? There's nothing else in here around the, like if it's a fulfilled order. So I don't think that there's any like where clause in here. So I'm going to put this as like, as rank. I think this is my SQL, so I don't think they have it. Like what I would do here is like, I would like, they have like have you used the qualify keyword yet, Ben? It's a pretty cool one.
Yes.
Yeah, every time I use qualify, I feel like a freaking mad scientist, but I'm guessing, my guess is that this doesn't work because this is my SQL.
You're going to put two, you're going to have to either put it as a CT or as a...
Yeah, see, it doesn't. You got, because my SQL is like always the last person to adopt everything, right? So, so we're going to say this as with ranked as, in this case, we have this guy. And then we're going to say select star. I want to make sure it says like output the description of the item along with the amount paid. So amount paid in this case is we have unit price times quantity. And this is as amount paid. And then in here, we just say from ranked. And then in this case, I'm going to call this like invoice rank because I don't like to use rank again because it's like a keyword, right? And like it can be kind of like bad. So I think if I run this is going to give us like each month. I think we probably want that invoice date just to like see like that this is actually working the way we would expect it to, so that we can see this is like, I get it. I did it again, dude. Like, it's like, I'm just so used to having properly modeled data. Okay. So this looks right. Cause you see how we have like, this is January, February, March, April. This looks pretty correct where you have, and then you have like the biggest invoice and the price paid. And then, but we don't really need that invoice rank because that's not like what we want. We want invoice no, description, invoice date, and amount paid. And this is going to be our kind of final output. I think this is, I'll put the description of the line item along with the amount paid. Yeah, this looks right. I think that I think I'm going to have another like curses. Yeah, another one of those. But like, I think,
I think the one thing we might not need is invoice date. I think that
Oh yeah, the invoice date here. Oh yeah, invoice date is just like not needed, right? That was just that was for my own edification on things, right? And I think invoice, it's also saying invoice number, right? Invoice number is also, yeah, you don't. Well, they only want 2 columns, right? I bet them that's just to make the unit tests on the StrataScratch side easier, right?
Well, it should be. I think it should be month, at least based on my.
Oh yeah, I feel you. You gotta bust out that date trunk again, right?
Yeah. It's the month, the thing,
and the amount invoice paid. Month, right? Oh, I'll do it their way though. Like I feel like you gotta like if they have stupid column names, you gotta keep the stupid column names. But invoice date, but I gotta keep it here as well. Yeah, invoice date. And you see how my bad habits, dude. There we go. Okay, there we have our invoice month and the amount paid, and this is gonna be the biggest item there, dude. Dude, that one's fun. That's a fun one. Like I like. I think this one's like tricky, like especially when you just like think about all the different ways that this could be done. You know.
It's one of those that's like you could go down a lot of wrong paths. I think kind of.
Yeah, I think a lot of engineers here will reach for order by and limit and stuff like that, and they're gonna reach for that. And I've seen this happen a lot where like you have those situations, but then like one of the things that I like to push engineers on is thinking about things like, well, what if there's a tie, right? Yeah. And like, how does this code handle a tie? And then really trying to dig deep on them of like, okay, this is what's going to happen under the tie circumstance. And a lot of times that's where the order by and limit is really tricky, you know? Right. Yeah. But like, yeah, that one's fun, dude. Oh, I like these problems a lot.
You're not happy with the invoice date being.
I mean, I hate that so much. Yeah, like that one, like. That's brutal. Like it's like you got to use underscores, dude. Like it's like being like I don't use spaces in my code or whatever, right?
Yeah. No form of casing style. Camel casing, snake. It doesn't matter. It's like nothing. Just
nothing. Just we're gonna have one word. Yeah, just like an incoherent string of alphanumeric characters. Right? Okay. All right. This is gonna be good. Okay. Find the email activity rank for each user. Email activity rank is defined by the total number of emails sent. The user with the highest number of emails sent will have a rank of 1, and so on. Order the user total emails and their activity rank. Order records by the total emails in descending order. Sort users with the same number of emails in alphabetical order. Okay, so that's showing me that part there is going to be, you got to use like a 2, like you got to do a double order by there. In your ranking, return a unique value, even if multiple users have the same number of emails. For tiebreaker, use alphabetical order of the usernames. Okay, so that last bit there, this bit on like in your ranking, return a unique value, even if multiple users have the same number of emails. So you have 3 choices here, right? You have rank, dense rank, and row number. Those are the 3 like ranking functions you get in SQL. This one like is even if the multiple users have the same number of emails, this is the line that says use row number, because rank and dense rank, if you have a tie for first, you're both going to get first. If you have but in row number, it's like weird. And what it does in that case is whatever the natural ordering of the data is in the database. It's interesting because it is deterministic. I've played with row number and I thought it was like random, but it's actually not. It uses the natural order of the data. So like every time you run the query, you're going to get, if you run the query on the same results, you're going to get the same ranking, right? Because it's based on like where the data is sitting in Postgres, which is nice. But like, so that's what this is saying, is that last line is all about like, we want to have a ranking. So there's a unique ranking. There's no ties. Like, and then like essentially in that case, for tiebreaker, use alphabetic order of the usernames. But this is where this part actually makes it so this last little bit says maybe don't use row number, right? Because you actually the data is unique enough that you don't have to worry about that, right? You can so let's run this code real quick. Is this at the so this is at this is at like the event grain, right? Find the
Yeah.
email activity for each user. Email is defined by the number of emails sent. So in that case, we're going to be using from user in that case. So let's just go ahead and make that. We have from user count 1 as num emails. See, this is where StrataScratch needs to do better, right? I mean, well, or like this problem, whoever did this problem, they're better because they like actually use underscores in their column, right?
Yes.
So so we got to go and talk with those guys about that. Okay, so and then I think it's saying we have, because we just have from user, and that's going to be our tiebreaker. And it looks like there's no duplicates there. So since there's no duplicates in the from user, right, which you wouldn't expect there to be, we don't need to use row number. I actually would probably advise against using row number because that's less clear and compared to like using like a rank function. So I'm just gonna throw this guy in a CTE here, call this email counts. And then this will be our kind of what we rank on. So if we say select from user, and then in this case, so there are ties here, and that's fine. I think in this case, I like dense rank. I don't know. I think that's where this is. Oh, we have expected output. Can we see like what this is supposed to look like? Okay, so, oh, wow. Like, you see, this is, dude, they're just giving you the answer like that, bro. Like,
oh, wow. That's actually hilarious.
I don't even hit the hints there. Okay, anyways, it looks like they want to do, they like row number, but like, I don't think it matters because of the fact that you also have a from user in here, right? So, and like, in this case, I disagree with StrataScratch because I care about code readability. I'm going to use dense rank because I'm a fan of dense rank. I think dense rank is the best one. We're going to say over. And then in this case, we should say partition by. In this case, oh, wait, there is no partition by. There's just order by. Because it's just it's a global ranking. There's no window. So in this case, we have num emails descending, comma, from user ascending. And then that will give us, I would say this as email rank, and then we can say from email counts. This should give us, oh, we need total emails in there too. Oh, they using total emails? Okay. I'm like,
you're just dogging, you're just like dunking.
Yeah, come on.
I'm glad
Okay.
you used this one and not something I built.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you see here though, like you see here how like it's the same, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason this is the same, I just want to illustrate this for the fans. Like, so if we remove the tiebreaker though, right, and we run this code now, it's going to be different, right? So you see now we actually have that 1-1 instead of 1-2 because we don't have the tiebreaker for the order by, and that's why we can use dense rank and get the same solution or the same answer because we have this second thing in here for the tiebreaker. Because that's one of the things I've always found so weird about like rank, dense rank, and row number is that like if there are no ties, they're the same. They're exactly the same. It doesn't matter which one you use if there's no ties. Then like they all will return the exact same data. So that's why in this case, like it doesn't matter, right? We can use rank too. Rank is going to give us the same values, right? You see how we get the same numbers because like we are down to a point where there's no duplicates in terms of ranking. So like that's where these three values, it doesn't matter. See, we can say, let's just throw in row number here as well, just to show. Like, see, same. Even because they really want you to use row number, but like, I see, this is another great example of where I disagree with StrataScratch, and I'm like, nah. I would say in this case, I would either pick rank or dense rank because that is like, I mean, it's literally in find the email activity rank, right? It's right there, rank, right? And it's like, okay, like we should probably use functions in our SQL that describe the problem statement. And it's an interesting like kind of view of the world there of like, oh, because of the fact that we don't have any ties, it doesn't matter. But like it at that point, it only matters from like a readability perspective, right? And that's where I'm more of a fan of using the rank function here than row number.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, like, and this is like taking a step back from even like the query level. Like, for anyone watching, like, in the last 30 minutes, you've answered 4 questions of varying difficulty, which in like Facebook world, like if you're doing the screening interview, is basically like, hey, they're great on SQL.
Yep,
I
that's
think
the
maybe the
line.
4th question would have been a little bit harder than most of the questions I've asked.
Mhm.
Usually what just ends up happening is like 1, 2, 3 are pretty straightforward, and as long as you can answer those, it's like an okay signal. The 4th one's generally like, I want to say it usually has like 2 parts that are pretty, like, require some big query. And I don't think I've never, like, I've done 150 interviews. I've never seen anyone get to the 5th question. Or if they do, I like ask it and it's like 1 minute left. I'm like, I can ask the question, but you
Yeah,
have 1 minute
I
left.
usually
Like,
kill it when I was interviewing at Facebook. I would kill it and just give them that time back to ask questions, right? Because I'm like, because it's like, especially if they do 4, then it's like I have the signal that like they are good enough, right? And then it's
yeah,
like, okay, especially because like mostly this interview is emulating more of the code screen, and it's
yeah,
like, and like I like to try to get other signal about like, okay, does this person actually want to work at the company? Do they like actually care? Because especially like if they like, for example, if they don't have any questions for me like at all about like the company or the role that they're in, that's usually like more of a negative signal that I will also give in the feedback, right? And
yeah,
so that's where like I prefer to do that than to like try to grind out one more question out of them, especially if they already hit the bar, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
different if they are like if they're on the 4th question, if the 4th question is like, because that's usually the bar. And it's like, if there is only a couple minutes left for the 4th question, I will give it to them so that they feel like they did as many questions as they could, and
yeah,
give them, because I don't want to feel like I robbed them of time, and like be like
yeah,
maybe they're gonna bash it out in 2 minutes, because like really these questions you can solve them like if you are like if you get lucky or you can see exactly what you need to do quickly, you can solve these in 5 minutes, right? So it's
yeah.
definitely possible to do in 5 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, you've solved a lot of these in like probably
Mhm.
that time. You spent more time just like talking like, oh, thanks, Reg, or
Yeah, right. Really
this
just
is a
being
bit a
very
little more casual.
philosophical about stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because like usually when I've had to do interviews, the other thing that often happens is there's always like 3 spots people get stuck on or like do something incorrect. And so usually I'm like, did you think about this? And it's like it's
Mhm.
almost like programmatic where I was like, they could just program an AI at this point. Like you could see where they were coding and just like remove me because there's
Yeah.
only like one person maybe every 100 interviews that goes a completely wild direction that you're like, where are
Yeah.
you even going? But most
Oh
people
yeah, and
follow
those
like,
when those interviews happen, and like usually you get that signal on the first question, like when it's like the hello world question, and then they're like they do something wild on the hello world question, and you're like what's going on in your mind, bro? Like what like this is like a one liner, like this is 1 line of code, like, or 2 lines of code, like you don't have to do like 50 lines of code for this, dude. Yeah, like
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure, like it's awesome. Like I've always found that the other big thing when I've been doing these interviews is that really just talking it out. Like I feel like in this interview today, I was a little bit excessive, and I probably like in an actual interview, I would have been more like a little bit more like focused on just getting the solution out. Cause I'm all
yeah,
about like, for me, I'm all about like, I know that the bar is going to be like 4-ish questions. And it's like that like everywhere. It was like that at
yeah.
Airbnb as well. Netflix is weird. Netflix didn't have a code screen because I was just able to go immediately on site because I already had like a good like in there. But
Yeah,
like at Airbnb, it was the same. They have like the same exact process. And that's like for me when I'm in the code screen. I know I'm like I go into these interviews being like, I want to talk with people. I want to talk with them. So I'm like, I'm going to try to bash out these questions as quickly as possible. So then I can have like 30 minutes to just vibe with the person, and just like, just like talk with them and see what their thoughts are, and like kind of get kind of an insider view into the company. And that was a big thing I did at Airbnb was that. And like when I was talking with a lot of the person who did the code screen for me, I got a lot of really good signals from them around just like, oh wow, this company's pretty chill. This company has good work-life balance, and this company like really does like put data engineering at like a high level. Like they really do like expect a lot of quality. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. So like I think that like that's a big thing that people forget about sometimes. I think when like they're interviewing for like big tech roles
yeah,
is they think that the only thing that matters is like passing the test. And that like they don't even think about like, oh wait, maybe this isn't even a job that I want, right? And like because you got to know, I mean, obviously you can do your research on Blind and like on the internet to learn about like the cultures of these companies, but really having a one-on-one conversation with someone who actually works there, who is like giving you an interview right now. They work there so much that they are interviewing, that like you can get really good signal from that for sure. And I've always had like really good, like honest conversations with those people too. It hasn't felt like they're like giving me a sales pitch. It actually feels like they're giving me like the honest information about it, which I really appreciate for sure.
Yeah. No, and for anyone who's here, like the first 30 minutes were basically us going to questions. And Zach, we can do more if you want, but also I think it's also helpful just to talk about tips in interviewing. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. One thing, so you brought up Airbnb, and I was like pointing to this Airbnb article from 2018 where they talk about their refocus on data engineering. When did you start at Airbnb? Was it like 2019?
2021. 2021. Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, it was already past several years, because I was going to ask, like, what was data engineering like at Airbnb before?
I actually know. I mean, because they were still in the process of moving everything over, right? And like one of the things that happened was, with like Hive, one of the things that Hive was like really good at, but also it ended up being something that was kind of bad, was Hive like opened the floodgates to being like, anyone who knows SQL can now write a big data pipeline. And like, and so what ended up happening was there was this massive proliferation of pipelines everywhere at Airbnb. There was all these duplicate pipelines and duplicate data sets because a lot of like the analytics teams, they were like, well, I don't want to rely on the data engineer to write me my pipeline, so I'm just going to write it myself. And then after a while, they were like, this is unmanageable. This is so unmanageable. So that's when they came up with like the Midas process, which is like how to get like a gold stamped pipeline, so that like, because when in the old world, when there was all these duplicated, proliferated pipelines written by data engineers, data analysts, software engineers, even some product managers probably threw their hat into the ring to write some Hive. And but it's hard to know which data to trust. And what ended up happening was like, we had a lot of velocity in like 2018, 2019 of like moving data, but it came at the cost of like, what data do we trust? And also on the cloud side of like how much extra cloud cost are we computing, because we are just computing these same data sets over and over again. And we aren't thinking about it like in a holistic kind of comprehensive way. And so like, that was a big change. And that's why like the Midas process, what they do is like, they were like, okay, if you want a Midas certified pipeline, it has to be written in Scala. And that was essentially the bar. That's what they did to make it so that like other people besides data engineers like really weren't going to be writing these Midas certified pipelines, because of the fact that like the Scala bar was like essentially put in place there to make it so that it was a data engineer was the one who wrote it. But then also like with Scala, you get like unit testing, integration testing. You get like this like full suite of like software engineering, like quality controls that you don't get in the Hive world. And so like, that shift was awesome. I mean, at the same time though, when I worked at Airbnb, it did feel like a little bit excessive that they went like too far that way, where I was like, dude, I just want to write a freaking pipeline right now, man. And like, why is it like 15 steps to write a pipeline? And so like, in some ways it also felt a little bit like onerous, right? And but it was kind of a good middle ground, I feel,
do you see, I'm just curious, do you, like I don't know how much you're seeing outside of the normal world. Do you feel like it's similar with like DBT? Is that kind of a similar, you feel like, issue?
Yeah, DBT is going to have a very similar issue where like, because you're going to have that same sort of like templatization, and like DBT like gets more people in to like be able to write pipelines and code, right? And I think, and it gives this false sense of security in some regards as well, because it's like, hey, we do quality checks. Hey, we do all this other stuff, right? It's like DBT does have like a certain layer of quality in it as well, which I think is good. And like, and that's where I think DBT is amazing for not master data, but the layer below master data. So like master data, I think should still be done like in mostly like a very software engineering mindset of like, hey, like we should write code, unit tests, integration tests, all the like very software engineering way of doing things. But then once you have that master data and you want to do like joins and aggregations on top of the master data,
that should be done in DBT. And that should be like a very messy playground where analytics engineers and data scientists can just go nuts. And I think that delineation is hard though, because a lot of times when you're trying to solve these business problems, the master data doesn't exist yet. And so like, I think that's where companies are going to see that, like, that's where the split, I kind of think of that as like what's going to happen in data engineering is you have that split of like, you have the data engineers who are going to focus on master data and are going to be really like software engineering focused. And then you have the data engineers that are going to focus on analytics, and they're going to be a lot more in that kind of DBT, SQL, kind of snowflake world, you know?
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Want to do one more here, dude? Or we can do Q&A as well. I'm down either way.
Cool. I was gonna say, so as a data analyst, a lot of my interview questions are a lot more business focused and how data provides business value. Do you experience that as basically as data engineers? Do we get those types of questions?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, so for me, that interview is like, I think that's kind of not the SQL interview, but I've had another interview at both Facebook and at Robinhood. Okay. Yeah, I've only had this interview at Facebook and Robinhood. Everywhere else, I haven't really had it. But it's a different interview. It's called like the product sense interview, and like understanding like how to measure things and like what is the impact of measuring different things. And like you usually don't write code in those interviews. It's just more about like, okay, can you understand how to measure a product and build a product and stuff like that? Yeah.
And for anyone out there, it's like product metrics are definitely very specific. Facebook actually gives you like a whole, like, here's a pitch deck from, I think it's like Zur or something, some gaming software. It's like, so if you want to understand that, I'd look up product metrics. So how important is DSA, data structures and algorithms, for data engineering? Is it basic level, or is it basically a higher level?
Ooh, that's a good one. I want to answer that question with it depends. Like I think like I would say this is the way I would put it. Like I like to think of this as like the 80-20 rule. So I think in 80% of your interviews, you're going to see mostly like leet code easy and leet code medium questions. But then in other interviews, you could see a leet code hard. Like for me, Facebook and Airbnb gave me a leet code medium. Netflix and Robinhood and Stripe, they all gave me leet code hard. And so like I think as you kind of like gravitate towards more of that like software engineer, data engineer archetype as opposed to the analytics archetype, you're going to see more hard questions. And like as you gravitate towards the analytics archetype, you're going to see more medium questions. And then even in some cases, like for some of the data science interviews, because like there are going to be like, even you might not even get the DSA round. Like, and I'm curious to see like how that kind of shifts in industry as like this new like archetype of role kind of progresses. But definitely like if you can know like the like stacks and queues and arrays and recursion and and big O notation, if you know those 5, I found that like just those 5 answer most questions. You don't have to know more of the other stuff around like dynamic programming and like binary search and breadth first search. I've had one, the Robinhood question was a breadth first search question, and that one was brutal. That was a very intense question. But like it does depend a little bit, because some people think data engineers are software engineers and they should know all the data structures and algorithms, which I think is stupid, because like you don't use them very much. Like I mean I probably use DSA like 1 day a month or something like that. It's like something very low, on how much I actually apply that knowledge. So but what are your thoughts on that, Ben?
Yeah, no, I mean, it kind of fits similarly, right? Like Facebooks tend to be like, one, they don't tend to be too leet codey. I always like to say they're more operational, right? Like it's like, I think the very like 4th question that I was asked required a stack or a queue. Other than that, it was like the rest of it you could get away with like arrays and for loops, and it was pretty straightforward, and like if statements. So like that's very basic, but that's also like I think something you've discussed, very synonymous with like the fact that Facebook's data engineer is very close to an analytics engineer, right? Like you're really basically writing Airflow jobs in Data Swarm and SQL. That's the majority of your work. Whereas, yeah, like if you look at some of these other roles, they're much more heavy. Like Stripe makes a lot of sense. That's like a little more code heavy, especially I assume at the level that you're going at, where they're gonna
Yeah,
be like, yeah, like
exactly.
answer these questions. But yeah, I think like you said, recursion, stacks and queues, arrays. What were the other two you said? I'm trying to remember.
Stacks and queues, arrays. I said like lists, but lists and arrays are
Oh,
like the same thing, right?
yeah.
And
With Python, yeah, it's always like a
yeah,
weird. It's like it's all the same.
it's all the same. Like there's just like you have, like an ordered set of things, right? And but big O notation, right? And
Oh, yeah,
both
that was
like
the other one, yeah.
because one of the things I would push engineers on in the Facebook interview, in the DSA code screen, was I'd be like, so this is O of n. How can you make this O of 1, right? And like I was really looking for them to be like, we need to use a set instead of an array, so that like I could actually see them like understand kind of the trade-offs there. And like I think that's another big kind of thing to understand, is that like a lot of times you can make the time like because there's the time complexity, but you also have the space complexity of an algorithm. And a lot of times you can actually increase the space complexity to reduce the time complexity. And if you understand that concept, that can be a very strong signal to the interviewer that you know DSA really well. And I would always push engineers in when I would do the code screen and the data structures round in the on-site at Facebook. I'd push them on that and be like, yo, like how can you make this faster? Or like, is there anything you can do to optimize this? And so it's like not just knowing the algorithms, but understanding like how many iterations are happening. And like if this was like instead of a list of 30, if it was a list of 2 billion, how would it change? Like what like, is it gonna grind to a halt, or is it what's gonna happen, right? Because you want to be careful when you have those, like if you have 2 for loops, if they're like nested, and then you have that kind of like n squared, because n squared, like if it's 10, that's 100, right? But if it's a billion, then it's like, I don't know, a very big number. What's a billion times a billion? That's a very, very big number, right? And so like because when you have an n squared algorithm and you're in the billions, like then it's not going to run. It's just going to stop. It's just going to not even finish, right? And so like that's where like really having an understanding of like how these algorithms work, especially as you increase n, like what's going to happen. And I think that that's the other big part of like the DSA round for sure.
Yeah, I also like thinking about like that on the data side, where it's like, oh yeah, like you can make things faster by adding an index, but in turn you add both obviously more time in terms of actually inserting data, but also more space is required in general because that's stored somewhere. Or like you can pre-aggregate data in a table, but now you've taken up more space somewhere else to run something faster. But different, but similar. I always find like that's the compute trade-off. It's like, well, you can either take up more space or be faster, or you got to pick.
Yeah, you can't have both. It's very hard to have both. Like,
yes. Let's see. Oh, this one's less of an interview question. But since we mentioned DBT, do you think Fivetran DBT plus Databricks is going to replace ADF plus Databricks for usual data pipeline scenarios?
I mean, I think I like Fivetran, dude. Like I've gone back and forth about it, and I feel like ever since I left big tech, I've like gotten more grounded in like reality of the matter, right? And like I feel like because like I think before I left big tech, I was very against like Fivetran and everything. I'm like no, data engineers write Python. They don't freaking move boxes around in a UI. Like that's dumb, right? But like now, like as I've kind of like realize that that's actually something we should invite and we should embrace, is like the fact that like other types of people are going to be being able to create pipelines. And I think that like, I think Fivetran on a lot of these things like will be interesting, especially like, I think a big future world is where you have data engineers that give you that first layer of master data. And then anybody else after that, like whether they're using DBT or Fivetran or like whatever other technology they want to use, then they can go nuts on that high quality data because that data is already validated. And I think that that's like, I think a future world is going to look like that. Like it's similar to kind of like the data mesh concept, right? Where it's like, we give you the master data and then like the domain experts actually then define the metrics and the KPIs and all the other things about that master data. That like because I've always found that like when you do that, like because I mean at Netflix we tried to even go one layer forward where it's like we're like, okay, we're gonna let the non-data engineers manage the master data, and that pattern doesn't work. That
No.
pattern doesn't work. You need expertise.
Never.
You need expertise at, especially like if you have a data set that has like 10 or more downstream pipelines, you really do need to have like data engineers who are good at on-call, who understand data quality, who understand how to like backfill and restate like if things go wrong. You have to have that. Like, and but then after that, like those pipelines that are like, I call them like leaf, they're like leaf pipelines where like the only downstream they have is like a dashboard or a metric, and then that's it. Those pipelines can be way more like flimsy because it doesn't matter as much because like they don't have like the impact of them doing something wrong is a lot less. So that's kind of like how I thought about how Fivetran and all this stuff fits into this new world.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way of thinking about it too. It's like, because like when, and you always kind of see this pattern emerge. It's like one, it's repeated like over and over again. Like, well, let's just get rid of data engineers. Like, it's a nice concept. I think we've been trying to do it since, I mean, from when I broke in with data lakes. So like, we'll just put everything in a data lake and let the data scientists work from that. And then they're like, well, that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like we've been like they've been trying to deprecate us for years, Ben.
It's like us in SQL, but no, it's funny. Yeah, I think the one risk with like Fivetran and dbt generally just is cost, and that's with most of the cloud. I had a client who they were going to try. I think it was, I'm trying to remember how many millions of rows it was going to be, but basically it was going to be like 12,000 a month using Fivetran. And I was like, it's from one data source.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. We could pay someone to do it for that much.
If you just hire someone full time,
yeah. If it was from, I think it makes sense when it's like, oh, I've got like 100 data sources, and then all together it's like, 10,000. That's like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because writing 100 data connectors or 50 or 20, that's expensive.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
when it's one, it's like
not quite worth it. Yeah,
not quite worth it. So there's always costs that you have to think about for when you're building these pipelines. Let's see. For mid-level DE role, is there a rough breakdown of focus between SQL, Python, and Spark, and other tools?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I found that like you really should at mid-level, like if your company uses Spark, you should be looking mostly at Spark. I mean, like Python is like a layer there. Usually Python is just like the orchestration layer. I mean, unless you're using PySpark, then like, but I'm saying PySpark is not Python in this case. I'm saying PySpark is Spark, right? And so like whether you use Scala or Python doesn't matter. Like focusing on Spark is going to be, for me, I've noticed that was where that paid the most dividends in my career over time. And I've kind of like, now, like, I mean, like at Airbnb, like I was maybe 10% of the time in like regular Python. And that was just to like configure Airflow. And that was it. And everything else was like in Spark. Right. And so like, and I think as a mid-level, you should really try to get that really firm understanding of distributed compute, whether that be Spark or BigQuery or Snowflake or whatever other, technology you want to use. Cause it doesn't matter quite as much like which technology you're using there. It's just understanding like how like the data is split and like how skew happens and like all those kind of distributed compute concepts. I like that. But also as a mid-level engineer, one of the things that you didn't ask about there was like, what about like soft skills and growing your career in terms of like talking with your team and mentoring and like learning from other people and stuff like that. That piece I think is also very important. That like you need to be learning the leadership skills as well to get to senior. Like because if you don't have the communication skills and you're amazing at Spark, you'll probably still get to senior, but like you're gonna have a less good time at senior because like you need those soft skills to push back and to delegate. You need to be able to push back and delegate in order to like really be an effective senior engineer.
Yeah, I'm working on an article about this right now where it's like things that kind of stop people's career. And one of the things I think that often happen with technology, all of us that are engineers, is we get stuck in this horizontal skilling kind of goal where we're like, oh, we're a good data engineer. Now I want to become a good MLOps engineer. Or we're a good MLOps engineer. Now we want to become a good this. And obviously that's valid if what you want to do is just like learn a ton of different technologies. But if you never start going up the pyramid of like how you drive impact, you're just going to kind of be stuck, like you said, probably as a senior engineer. It's really hard to move to staff without being able to like you said, communicate, delegate, push back, be able to get
and
buy-in
and,
from
and,
people.
and architect as well, right?
Yeah,
Like there's the
yeah.
other higher level concept of like data architecture and kind of
Yeah.
really going deep into the like pipelining data worlds as well, right? And that's like a skill that's like a little bit like, it's like, because you can stack the technical skills vertically as well, right? It's not just like the you can go horizontal and learn Spark and React and D3 and like all the other like whatever. I mean, I did that. I did both, right? I tried doing both, like trying to go really broad and up. Right. And I mean, I had no life for like 4 years because that's like all I was doing was I was trying to do both, go like try to get as much of that area, try to cover as much of that like rectangle as I could, that rectangle of skills. But like, yeah, I definitely found that like the going up and stacking the skills, I found those paid more dividends in my career. But as an entrepreneur, I've actually found that the broad skills have been awesome. Like I've been building out like my boot camp infrastructure. And I am so grateful that I know TypeScript. I'm so grateful that I know React, right? Because I'm like, wow, I can build all this and I don't have to like really hire anybody. And I don't have to like explain this to anybody. I can just build my platform and it's going to be awesome. And I don't have to pay the 10% to give to another platform. I can just like, I can have that 10%, right? And so I've found that like the broad skills can also like in other, they can have unexpected benefits in your life, like later down the line. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, everything from broad technical skills to marketing, all of it, getting engagement. Speaking of other skills, what do you think are the most essential skills to have in a world with AI for a person who likes ML and data engineer, besides the soft skills?
Besides the soft skills, I mean, data validation, like because just because you have ChatGPT write your pipeline or ChatGPT builds your model, like ChatGPT, like is one of the things that like I have not seen it do yet is like, okay, you give ChatGPT a data set and say, hey, ChatGPT, is this data set good quality? Like that, I think that ChatGPT is very far actually from being able to do that because of the fact that good quality has a couple different meanings, right? There's the simple good quality of like no duplicates, no like nulls where there no nulls where there's not supposed to be, kind of like those very basic things. ChatGPT can do that. It's pretty good. But then it's like, what about if it violates a business rule? Okay, good luck, ChatGPT. The only way that it could do that is if like you describe all the business rules to it as well. And then at that point, you might as well just write the SQL and do the validation yourself. So I think that like really understanding how to validate a data set is something that like is not going to go away for a long time. And I think that's also the area, like, there's all this like fear of like, will LLMs replace data analysts? And it's like, that task is very challenging for an LLM to do. And so I think that's where like data analysts can kind of lean more into that, lean more into the quality and building good stuff. Like that kind of stuff is like going to be really hard to become like, I don't know, deprecated or lose your job or whatever. But then I think also just learning about the platforms, right? Learning how to build things quickly and learning how to use LLMs to work more quickly, right? So for example, for me, I've been building out this checkout process for my bootcamp over the last couple of days. And normally I would not have said that I'm going to be able to build an entire checkout process for my bootcamp in a week, right? That's something that I probably would have scoped at like 3 or 4 weeks, right? Because like it's a lot to do. It's a lot of steps. And it's like you're taking people's money. So you want to make sure it's high quality. But it's like that task is like has been done so many times that ChatGPT is very, very, very good at giving you the code snippets that you need. So like, and I was amazed. I mean, one day I got the whole thing done, like with test credit cards, like end to end. And I was like, wow, coding is different now. Coding hits so different now. And you can do a lot of that same stuff with data engineering and ML as well, especially like if you are good at the data modeling skill. The data modeling skill will get you and you can have your input schemas and your output schemas. So if you have that, if you have the top and the bottom of your pipeline, and then you ask ChatGPT to give you the details in the middle, it does pretty good. It gets you like 80% of the way there. And like, and then you might have to like fiddle around the edges. It might get like one line wrong or like, I found it to be very prone to off by one errors, especially like if you're doing like a slowly changing dimension pipeline with ChatGPT, it always like messes up the between syntax or like the inclusive versus exclusive. Like, because the reason why it messes those up is because it has examples of both. right? It has a bunch of examples of doing it inclusively and exclusively. So it doesn't know which one is the right way because technically they're both right. But it has a hard time distinguishing that. But like, I mean, yeah, that definitely learn that as well for sure. But what are your thoughts on new skills you should be learning, Ben?
Oh, I mean, new skills. I'm not sure if like
or
more
skills.
more skills. No, I definitely think again with ChatGPT that's been really helpful. Like I find it funny because like I'll have Copilot running in my background with VS Code, and I'll just like be like, oh, I wonder if I just comment like the code below does XYZ if it'll just finish it for me, and like yeah, you'll just like comment it, and it'll just be like, oh, you want this code? Here's exactly what you want. So I think that's kind of like you figure out all these interesting like hacks around it. Like, yeah, you can go to ChatGPT, ask it to code you something. You can go in Copilot and just say like, hey, do this thing for me. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it really is going to come down to a lot of those architectural skills and understanding how businesses flow. You know, when I'm working with a lot of clients, you know, I think a lot of people perceive that, you know, or maybe they don't. Maybe if you're just coming to the industry, you perceive it this way that like, oh, everyone must just have one system or like a few systems where they pull like, let's say, you know, their data from, like if they're a shopping company, right? Oh, they must just have one database for all their orders. And it's like, no, because that company represents like 7 other companies because it's merged over the years. And so when they do their financial statements, they're pulling it from, you know, some Oracle system over here, some Shopify over there, like 30 different places, right? Or when you're looking at a funnel and it's like, oh, how are they tracking like someone through their sales funnel? It's like 1 or 2 systems. Like, no, they've got like there's like 3 actual companies. One's in the EU, one's in, you know, the US. The EU is using this, the US is using this. They're trying to combine data, GDPR. So understanding how all of those flows actually go and how you can represent those in data, I think is still just very valid. And grasping that and be able to like, you know, understand what people are saying and actually translate into code is very difficult because they'll say it and you're like, okay, and then you do it and they're like, that's not what we meant. You're like, that's what you said.
It's like, come on, like, and I've always found that challenging of like delivering what they need, not what they ask for, right? That's like one of the messy skills, right? I definitely noticed like when I was working at Airbnb and like I worked on the profitability pipeline, which is like measuring on a reservation level, like the unit profitability of each reservation. And like that pipeline was such a mess. It had that same thing where you think you're like, oh, it's just like revenue and cost, right? That's a simple pipeline. But no, that pipeline had like almost 100 sources, right? And it was just like everything flowing in. And it was like, wow, there are so many things that impact revenue and profitability and all these things, right? And like the amount of complexity that can happen in like that kind of like business rules and that business domain area can blow up. It can blow up a lot, like for sure. And that's like, I think that's another skill though that is important is actually like recognizing like what your business does, the company that you work for, what they do, and like what actually can change, like understanding like the impact that you could possibly have. Like, because it's like when you're working on a data set, you're like, okay, like what is different? Like what is actually going to change in the business when we have this data? Like, and if the answer is not much, then like, maybe you should say no. Maybe you should like push back and say no. And like, and I think that kind of prioritization skill of like, because there's always so much demand on data engineers. So there's like, you can write pipelines every single day at your company forever because there's always going to be a big demand for data. Like that's just like how it is. And the data engineer is often the bottleneck. And so that's like where that prioritization skill really, really helps a lot, like in getting you further in your career as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think that's, you're covering a good example where you think like, oh, Airbnb, like they've built their system from the ground up, like in the last decade. It shouldn't be that complicated, but it's like, but it is.
Messy.
It is. It always is.
Well, and they've migrated and moved around. And then like the other thing I've found interesting about these things is that like the systems sometimes change. And so if you're trying to build like a historical data set, a lot of times it's like, oh, you have to use these sources for these years and these sources for these years. And then it's like the backfill is so dumb. Like the backfill is like, oh, wow. Like now I have to like have like this like the sources change depending on the year that you are computing it for, so that you can have like a kind of a continuous data set throughout history, which can be really powerful because it gives people context where you can be like, wow, here's the picture for the last 10 years, which is something that I think a lot more data engineers are going to get better at, is that kind of like both the integration of like the data as it is today, but also the integration and keeping track of data across many, many years. I think those two things together are going to be like big things, because those charts of like when you have those big charts that are like, you look at the axis and you're like, wow, this axis is like 10 years of data. Like that's a lot of data. So like, and you can really, you could story tell very vividly when you have data on those time horizons of like, see, we did this thing. And then you can like annotate and you're like, so we did this in 2016, this in 2018. And you can see how it changed the chart and see now we're going up and to the right. And now we're happy or like whatever. Right. Like,
yeah. No, I think that's great. I want to drop it in like 2 minutes, but I'm going to pull up one more question.
Yeah.
Just because it's the classic. What is the difference between working as a data engineer in a big corp versus a startup?
Ooh, that's good. That's good. A big one I think is around scope of responsibility. Like where in big tech, right? Like you have like the platform team. You have all these other teams that just like make your job easier. Like, and all you have to really do is focus on writing SQL. Like, especially at Facebook. Facebook like is intensely that way. And so I think that's like the big thing. Whereas at a startup, like there's a good chance you might have to deploy your pipelines yourself or get that stuff set up, depending on how it depends. Like obviously startups themselves have like their own growth cycle where like, if you're like the first data engineer, if you're the very first data engineer at the company, like you probably aren't going to be writing pipelines at the beginning. You're going to be setting up infrastructure. Right. And that's going to be a very different kind of vibe. And then eventually it kind of, as the company more matures, you kind of go more and more towards like, okay, now I can just focus on the data.
Yeah. No, I think that's really on point. I think the difference is like, one, you called out ownership. I like that. Like generally it felt like at big companies, you're just like, there's some project manager and that project manager has been given a project for your, somehow there's been top down, like this is what you're going to work on attitude. Right. And then there's just project manager over you that's telling you what needs to get done today. Whereas if you're at a startup it said startup, not big tech. Oops. Well, yeah. That's a big corp. Startup, like you said, set up data infra. You're going to be doing stuff yourself. If you add in FANG, which is what I was for some reason thinking this question was, there's a ton of ownership where it's like, yeah, there might be a PM involved, but there might not be. It might just be you being like, hey, these are the projects I'm going to work on this half, and here's my plan to do it. I'll give you updates and see you in 6 months kind of thing. I mean, you'll be communicating obviously that whole 6 months, but that's kind of generally the difference.
Yeah, definitely. It's awesome.
Cool. Well, Zach, thanks so much. And for anyone who missed it, the first 30 minutes we go through some SQL questions. Zach answers them pretty flawlessly. Just breezes through them and goes nerds out a little bit about explanation. So if anyone wants to understand even the depth of it, you should check that out. Other than that, thanks so much for everyone for joining. And Zach, do you have any final words?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, guys. So I'm launching my bootcamp tomorrow. So if you're subscribed to my Substack, and you're gonna get an email if you want to join. So
all right. Thanks everyone. See you.
Awesome. See you.
Broadcast.